Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's talk about short-term thinking for a minute because I did a video, I don't know, weeks ago, months ago now, talking about kind of the comic industry and where real trouble sits. There's all this attention that gets focused on. Well, this title is trash because it's some supporting character in one of the books. It's being given a solo title. It's canceled in 2 issues and it's super woke and all that. And the challenge is that's not really an indicator that a comic publisher like a Marvel or a DC is in trouble. It's a bit character that was never no one involved in the creation of that title believed it was going to sell more than 25, 30,000 copies. And so you definitely do have a question, why was this done in the first place? And I think that's a decent question, but the success or failure of that title is more or less irrelevant. As an example, I mean, this is sort of the whole problem with the Pride issues or the Marvel Voices issues. None of them sell particularly well. They aren't relevant to the company's success, short or long term. They're just not. Again, you can definitely say, why is any attention being focused here at all? And I think this is something businesses do all the time is they go, well, okay, so if we know this is a losing bet, even 1% of someone's time and energy going into it is 1% of time that could be applied to something that is more successful, would make more money. And there's truth to that. There definitely is truth to that. But it's kind of like, you have a patient, and it's got several gunshot wounds to the chest and to the head. And as the victim of the gunshot wound was falling, the victim, cracked their knee on the pavement. And, the knee has to be treated. It's going to be a problem for sure. There's a fracture in there, everything else, but it's not life-threatening. The gunshot wounds to the chest and to the head, where blood is pooling inside the lungs and is about to, drown the man in his own blood, is the problem. Left untreated, that's going to lead to death. Knee left untreated is going to perhaps lead to some long-term injury, a limp, maybe some other problem. And that's a little bit what things like the Fire and Ice issue is, or the Marvel Voices stuff, or, some toxin, the spit out of Carnage, or a sub World of Wakanda book, or those books are not going to be big sellers by nature of the characters. You have to. There will be people on the internet who will certainly defend these books. There will be people on the internet who are like, well, that book looks like fun to me. Cool, but unless you have a complete psychopath, it is impossible for somebody to argue that any of those books are top 10, top 20 books that financially are going to save the company or be a major driver of its revenue. The best you could do is say, well, given time, this will build out a new audience that, 5 years from now could, be one of the top selling books. But that is, you have to strain your credibility a lot to get there. Doesn't mean, by the way, for all of you listening, doesn't mean you can't complain about those books. You can complain about anything. As comic fans, one of the charming things about us is that we get to complain about whatever we want, and often those things are silly. This is kind of one of the eye-rolling things I do when I hear people say, these comic fans complaining about a Krakoa book. It's like, I mean, in the 80s, why were people complaining about the lines on the Silver Surfer surfboard? There used to be like 3 lines that would go down the center. Like, does he need aerodynamics in space for the power cosmic? Is it like, what did Galactus say? I've got this kind of shapeless alien being that's all silver, but we want to put a little flare on the board to make it pop. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But that was fun. It's fun to complain about that stuff. And even though it's overbearing to people, it's fun to complain about Marvel Voices or Fire and Ice or whatever else. It just is. It may not be fun to you, but it's fun to someone. And that's why people do it. That's kind of what it means to be a fan. But In its history, a fan is short for fanatic, and just kind of let that roll around in your mind. But the problem is the main thing when the main thing isn't landing. And one of the big indicators to me that Marvel has significant trouble right now is a little bit in how they're behaving. So take a step back and kind of look at their lineup and what they're doing. Are there any comics that they're producing, any at all, that appear to be building or putting the foundation in place for a 2-year plus plan? Now, in the past, look at the Dark Reign initiative that lasted a year plus. My memory may be wrong. At least I admit it. Yeah. But you look at kind of the impact of Civil War. Okay, Civil War 7 months. It was late too, so it would be on 7 months. All the tie-ins and the after effects of Civil War, the initiative, and all these other comics. That whole thing was a 2 to 3 year plan. They had planned out the World War Hulk in there. If you buy the Civil War hardcover, you get a bunch of notes from Mark Miller to Joe Quesada, and I think Tom Brevoort was the third voice in this. But you get this email chain and notes back and forth between the three of them. And you see this plan being laid out for, I want to say, 3 to 4 years. I mean, a decent length of time, comics wise. You might remember that the Marvel used to do the Writers Summit, and they still kind of do. But the Writers Summit, people like Matt Fraction has commented on it. I'm trying to think of others. But they would comment on kind of long-term plans. They would try and put things in together for, years worth of stories. And those stories could change, but they would try to set up those kinds of plans. If you look at Marvel today, it is extremely clear, both because they're not talking about that stuff anymore, and in what they do, that the long-term planning is not something they're doing. The Ultimates line that did fairly well for Marvel is still pretty new. It's coming to an end in December. Now, by the way, this arc of it's coming to an end. It feels, again, fairly clear to me that they're basically just kind of hitting the reset button, and then we'll do other things. I'd be surprised if Deniz Camp isn't going to announce a DC exclusive deal or something. He'll shift all his work there. DC's crazy happy with him over the Martian Manhunter series, and I think they'll definitely snatch him up to do more. But nothing they're doing, including the Age of Revelation. I mean, the Age of Revelation, series through the X titles is so remarkably similar in tone and in spinoff and in push to Age of X-Man, a multi-month event that was really designed to kill time until Hickman was ready to start the Krakoa era. You look at Hickman's Krakoa era itself, and it was clearly intended as a kind of bigger plan that got, hijacked. In some ways shortened, in other ways expanded in titles, expanded in bringing other writers into it, to the point that Hickman kind of exited stage left. If you look at what they're doing with the Cosmic lineup, if you look at all of the different things that Marvel is doing right now, nothing has a time horizon beyond, 9 months. The company is in short-term planning mode. Now, speculation on that, fairly close sources to me suggest that, well, that's because Disney is, undergoing its real status change with the company to either ingest it fully into itself or perhaps license it out, or they're basically going to change. So they're being told no long-term plans. Again, don't know if that's true or not. Some people are claiming it is, who work for Disney. There's definitely fear within Marvel that is the case. I can tell you that directly, including people like Tom Brevoort is concerned that the axe will fall. But it's a company that is in short-term thinking. And when we going back to what I said at the beginning, when we talk about problems in the comic industry, short-term thinking is a problem. Comics by their nature are an ongoing subscription type business. It's a ongoing narrative business. It is not intended to be short term. It suffers when it's planned short term. It needs to really tap into its greatest strength, which is longer term storylines, getting people hooked on series, getting people to buy into those series for years at a time. That's what comics by its business nature is. Marvel is not doing that right now. And that is fundamentally why I think there's concerns. So the state rests. Now, what say you? How do you take the evidence? Thanks for listening.